So I'm going to try to talk and do a video. It's going to be crunchy and loud because I'm walking on ice. Like literally, really, it is maybe a little bit of snow sometimes on top, but mostly just ice. Severely compacted snow, which has turned into ice. I haven't done this in a long time. I haven't felt alone enough to do this in a long time. But, I mean, this is about as bleak as you can get as far as walking or, oh my goodness, nobody's going to be cross-country skiing on this. They might, no, they wouldn't be snowshoeing on this either. Nan's out there. She's being a good girl. She's being a good one. Yeah, she is. Got her on her 30-foot leash. And she's been doing well. Sticking pretty close by. Usually. But the other reason I wanted to talk is because I found out last week that Steve died. Steve the Juggernaut Ball, who held on to life like nobody I've ever seen hold on to life. Nobody his age anyway. He was 73, and he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. But he had that cancer ever since I met him in February of 2023. So he survived going on 3 years. And he kept rallying back from death, like from the most horrible places. And they did the most god-awful surgeries on him. But he just wanted to do anything to stay around for another day, another month, another beautiful fall season. You know, he just loved life. But we had not talked since August, and he died on Christmas Eve, December 23rd, 2025, and it'll be 3 weeks ago tomorrow. And I just started thinking about these talks that I did and doing one, and because Steve was one of the few people who listened to them. And I'm pretty sure he's the only one who listened to all of them. And I listened to one the other night because I remembered it as being like pretty good. And I listened to it the other night and I was like, oh my God. It is good, you know, but then I just like go off onto a tangent, or I go off on a tangent and it makes sense, and then I try to get back to where I was and it doesn't make sense anymore, or, you know, it's just not jiving. I'm a writer, not a talker, but I do love to talk, especially about things that matter to me, like friends and life and beauty. I hope I'm not making too much noise. I did blow my nose before I started this because it was a run-in. Ha! Always carry a handkerchief with you. I believe Steve, is it Olbermann? says that. It comes in handy, handkerchiefs. I do wash mine, but I always have one with me in the winter anyway, usually in the summer too. I just don't have my jacket on in the summer. Okay, so see, that's where I go. I just go off on those little rambles. But yeah, Steve listened to all of my talks. And he was a friend. He was my neighbor. And he kind of drove me crazy with his lawn mowing and insistence on cutting down any vegetation that didn't look like it was properly planted there. But he was a very good man, and he kept in touch with me by text after I moved from Unadilla in February of 2024. He kept in touch, and we never saw each other again. We never talked on the phone, but we kept up a sort of text communication all this time until August. And, you know, I think that's when we decided it was not a strong enough connection to withstand him, his inevitable last days, and, you know, loss of strength. And he really, I think, just needed to be with those he was absolutely the closest with. I mean, that's how I would feel in that case. I don't have a great wide circle of friends, and the people that would be near me would be my closest family, which would be my husband and my 2 sons and my dog. Other people maybe would get to pop in and say hello once. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. That sounds pretty sad, but I don't have a huge circle of friends, and Steve and I were you know, friends in need and friends indeed. We both needed a friend when we met each other, and we both helped each other, I think. But I told him, okay, so this is actually the story of how that all happened, I guess. That's what I want to talk about. Last May, I believe it was the very end of May, and like June 1st, he was in a very, very bad shape, and he was in the hospital, and they told him this is it, you know, he's dying. He's absolutely dying. He had this blood work done, and you know, this is not the first time I have lived through the almost death of Steve Ball. But like I said, that was Juggernaut, and he fought to stay. But so, you know, this time was the time for real. And it was a Saturday, and I had just come up here. Ooh, punch it through. I just come up here with Nan to take a walk. When I got the text, oh, great. And it was awful. It was sad, but also I'm not afraid of death, and I know Steve has lived a full and beautiful life, and I took myself out on that walk, and I grieved him. I cried, but I also encountered nature, and a bird flew, was flying out there, not out there exactly, but, joyously flying and swooping and catching bugs and stuff. And I knew that that's exactly what Steve was going to do when he died. And not only that, but he would meet his love again, who died a couple years ago. Or was it last year? Oh my God, time is so weird now. I think it was almost 2 years ago she died. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely knew this, that he was going to go soar like a bird. He would be a bird and go soaring, and he would meet Bonnie. And I didn't hear from him, and I didn't expect to hear from him. I thought he was dying, and then I heard from him like a day or two later. And he was fine. And he had even washed all his sheets and his blankets. And, it was great, but it was the last time that I went through this grieving process, and the most intense time that I had gone through this grieving process for Steve. And I got a little angry. I got angry. And I didn't show it to him or anything like that, but we texted a few times after that, and then it was still a dire prognosis, and I didn't hear from him for, I don't know, a month and a half, maybe 2 months, and then I did hear from him, and I really couldn't even believe that I was texting with him, because even though I didn't feel that he had died, I also hadn't heard from him in weeks and weeks and weeks. And so I assumed that he was either dying or dead. But then I heard from him. And we texted a couple times. And I did tell him, I had to clear the air and tell him that I was kind of pissed at him, and he said, that he would have said goodbye, but that he had kind of pulled away in a dark place, and perhaps he even felt my anger toward him, and it just made him go away. Perfectly plausible. So, we had a nice chat in August by text, I guess, and cleared some air, and And his last 2 words to me were, "I agree." I looked back, and I had been, he had been talking about how he stays up into the night sometimes, and he's just like, tired and can't do anything during the day, but he's up at night. And I responded by saying how much I love that time, that liminality, and where human consciousness is largely slumbering. So the energy around you is calm and not full of other people's static, I guess. But it does take a toll on your ability to do things during the day. And then he just said, "I agree." And that was our last conversation. And that was August 24th. And he died on December 23rd. And I'm glad about that. I think it's fine. It's a little sad, I guess, to me, but I also know he just needed to be with his family, which he was. He was with his wife, his very devoted wife, I swear. I don't know that I would be as devoted as she, but people could say that about my husband as well. Okay, I'm gonna try this icy hill. So anyway, he died, but I didn't know it. But I was in the habit of periodically Googling him and his birth year. And last Tuesday, I think it was last Tuesday, or maybe it was last Monday. Anyway, a week ago, basically, I Googled him and his birth year, and he came up first result, with his obituary. And he did, surrounded by his family, his wife and his 3 kids. Not kids now, fully grown men. And so I decided I'd look back. I would look back in my journal at, December 23rd and the surrounding days to see if there was anything in there. And so on December 24th, on Christmas Eve, I was in Albany, and I looked out the back door, and there was a mockingbird that flashed its white patches at me while landing on the railing out there, and it hopped around. It hopped around a bit on the porch railing and looked at me, and we looked at each other. Now mockingbirds, due to climate change, they have come northward quite a bit. But a mockingbird in Albany, New York, in deep December is a little odd. Right? It is. So, I think Steve definitely came to visit me then. But the other thing was, a week after Christmas, or the weekend after New Year, right before I was going back to work, I was in the kitchen in Albany, and Hold on. Good girl. Good girl. Yes. That's my girl. Yes. She's so good. So I was in the kitchen in Albany, and there's a Rosa Sharon tree, bush, right outside. There's like a picture window and a Rosa Sharon bush. And the squirrels and the birds like to hang out there because my husband feeds them all. And at certain times of day, in the mornings and in the evenings, especially in the winter, they'll hang out there, but they'll hang out there during the day too. And this was later in the morning. And I look out, and there's this bird, two birds out there. One of them is closer to the window on the Rosa Sharon bush, and I don't know what it is. I'm thinking it's a wren, because it has a really sharp, pointy beak, and behind it is a junco, and they're both just like beautiful, and they're both like, especially the one with the pointy beak, closer to the window, just staring at me. We were looking at each other, and I was talking to him, and because he was so cute. And then I went off to my laptop to see if I could find out what kind of bird it was. Turns out it was a nuthatch, not a wren. And went back, and they were still there, and they were still watching me. And the one in the background was just being patient. It seemed like they were together, but she was being patient and waiting for him to do his thing. And I swear to God, Steve and Bonnie came to visit me. And I get chills now just saying that. But I think it's true. They came to visit me. Steve wanted to tell me that, yeah, he did fly like a bird. And he did find Bonnie. And that's my story. And I'm just going to leave it there. Peace.